they're like, oh my God, Toyota's making these things. Like it's not just some like crazy startup. It's not just some like Chinese Communist Party psyop. Hello and welcome back to the Plugged In Podcast, a weekly news show all about the future of transportation. I'm Patrick George, editor-in-chief of InsideEVs.
And I'm Tim Levin, senior reporter at InsideEVs. This week we're talking about Toyota's huge EV push, the continued backlash against Elon Musk and Tesla, and we'll answer some listener mail in a new feature. But first, how's it going, man? It's like, normally I'm kind of pretending that I haven't seen you in a while when we do these intros, but I actually haven't seen you in a while. So
I know.
How was Europe?
I've missed you, dude. Like I was on the road. You were on the road. It's been a couple weeks since we talked to each other. So it's good to see you again. I'm doing well. I was in for what we're going to talk about today. I was in Brussels, Belgium last week for a Toyota event. It's my first time in Belgium. Lovely country, lovely city. Had a great time there. You know, it was a work event, so it wasn't going hard or anything. But like their beer game really is just on a completely different level than like Bud Light and overcooked IPAs like I have back at home. So that was really enjoyable on my off hours there. Yeah, it was a good visit. Went to the Auto World car museum in Brussels before I left. I got to see a lot of interesting stuff there, so it was a good visit. Lots to talk about, and got some nice time away from just looking at a computer screen all day. How about you? You were driving some Cadillacs recently. Are you able to talk about any of them by the time this airs, or not quite yet?
I cannot disclose. No, I drove the new electric Escalade, the Escalade IQ, and the kind of small EV crossover that they're coming out with, the Optic. I can't tell you what I think about them. I can tell you the Escalade is very big. I think that doesn't break the embargo. It is a very large EV. But yeah, more to come on that.
I'm looking forward to that. The Escalade's always really sweet. You it's kind of like my worst opinion. You see them all over like New York City as like, they're so huge to take up so much room on the road, but they're just like, it's like the best American car. They're so opulent and luxurious inside in just the most American ways possible. So I'm excited to see what you have to say about it and to see their take on EVs.
It is true. It's very off-brand for us, but like you get a gas Escalade out on the highway and turn on Super Cruise. Like I kind of can't think of a better experience than that, in a car.
No, nothing better. A few years ago, me and some friends when I was still living in Texas, we would go to the beach every summer in Port Aransas down by the Gulf of America. And one year I drove all my friends down in an Escalade, and in the subsequent years they were like, "Why the hell did you not get an Escalade again? What is this? What is this bullshit? Like a minivan or something?" So I kind of ruined everyone after that. Before we get into the news and stuff this week, I did want to bring one thing up, which is that Kevin Williams did a wonderful job subbing in for me last week, and I was walking around Brussels and I was listening to the podcast, and he brought up a thing about how many choices that European buyers have, EVs and even plug-in hybrids, and I was really kind of wowed by that when I was over there, because I've been to Europe in over a year now, and just there are so many options that market has, from like BMWs and Mercedes Benzes and Audis and things that they don't sell here, to like Seats and Renaults and DSs and Citroens, and they all have that like parked on the street portable plug thing into a nice little charging post. I'm like, man, like Europe's really getting it right. It's kind of not surprising to me that they're kind of moving on from Tesla, because they have a billion other choices these days, and it was cool to see that over there, just to see these cars like zooming past me silently all the time. So good on you, Europe.
Do you see any Chinese cars? I remember last time when I was in Munich, I saw like some Neos. I think I saw maybe a BYD. Do you see anything really interesting?
Yeah, I saw a BYD Seal zoom past me, which I thought was a Tesla Model 3 at first. That looks really good. It looks really cool. So my first on the road, Volvo EX30. That was nice. Volvo, but that one's I think is technically made in China. But yeah, just a really interesting variety of stuff. A lot of MGs. The famous British brand that's now owned by a Chinese company, and they're kind of crushing it right now in sales. So like that was just it was interesting to see all that.
Yeah, cool. They're Europe's living in the future when it comes to EVs a little bit. So is the Bay Area. I saw my first. We have somebody in the neighborhood who has an EX30, which has been also cool to see.
Nice. Good to see those on American roads. But for now, we should shift gears to talk about a company that seems to be finally getting serious in the EV game, and we love to see it. You want to kick us off, Tim?
Yeah, let's talk about Toyota. Toyota dropped a ton of EV news at its Kenshiki Forum in Belgium this week. It debuted the Urban Cruiser, a compact SUV for Europe, and showed off 2 more electric models due out soon, the updated BZ4X and the new CHR Plus. It also teased 3 more EVs dropping by next year. And all that's notable because Toyota has been way more reluctant to dive headfirst into the EV game than peers like Hyundai or GM. It's been a lot more focused on hybrids and to some degree hydrogen, which makes sense because it's kind of been the leader, especially in hybrids. But now it's really moving forward on EVs. Patrick, what did you see? You actually saw these cars. You talked to Toyota executives in Belgium. What's going on with Toyota?
Well, Tim, I can tell you this officially, brother. Toyotathon is on.
Toyotathon is on.
I got to make that made into a button or something so we can hit it anytime we want. It's gonna get really addicting. And you're definitely never gonna get sick of it. Yeah. So Toyotathon is on, man. Like you said, it was there. This company finally has a bunch of new electric models coming out. We'll start with the BZ4X. So it's so weird saying that out loud, honestly. Toyota's first modern EV. It's actually a car I kind of like driving because it's pretty agile, it's pretty fun, but it's long been super uncompetitive when it comes to range and charging and route planning and really anything that you'd want a modern EV to be and do. But they fixed all of that. It's much higher range than before. You get 2 new battery choices, 57 kilowatt hour and a 73 kilowatt hour. Used to be just one, it was a 72. In Europe, it's up to 573 kilometers of range, which in the U.S., like it used to max out at 252 miles. I'll do the metric conversions for you so you don't have to, folks. So now, just some back and napkin of math, that means it's probably going to be a 280-mile EV in America, if not more. It's gone from 214 horsepower to 343. It's still only 150 kilowatt fast charging, which is kind of like mid-pack, B+, B- these days, but they said they fixed how the charging curve works, meaning it can supply a steadier rate of electricity to the battery, so it's going to be way better on road trips. And they've also added better route planning so that you can actually like find charging stations from the navigation system and figure out how much juice you're going to need to go if you want to drive from like New York to DC or something like that. So like all of the features that modern EVs ought to have are finally coming to the BZ4X. And all the cars we're going to talk about today, these are European spec, but it's like kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like most of them are coming to America. And when this BZ4X does, it's going to have like, if not right away, then like soon, it's going to have a Tesla-style NACS plug, like from the factory. So it'll be able to use the Tesla superchargers from the get-go. So like this seems like one hell of a combination of specs on a car that was really not amazing before, but I think might be really competitive now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is great thinking from Toyota. The BZ4X, like you said, was always kind of a compelling like package. Like it looks great, it's a good size. I like the interior, it drives nice, but it kind of was missing the most important things that people want out of an EV, which is really good range and really good charging, and the ability to do things like route planning and preconditioning. So I'll be interested to see how they actually improve it. I mean, to be honest, like I think any improvement is good, but 280 miles and 150 kilowatt charging, like there's still a lot of reasons to buy a Hyundai Ioniq 5 instead of that. You can buy, or a Model Y, like you can buy EVs, competitive electric crossovers that do over 300 miles of range and can charge way faster than that. So, improvement, yes. We'll have to see if it's truly competitive. I think the good thing is like the thing that Toyota has most going for it here is that it's Toyota. People trust Toyotas, and we'll get into this more, I think, later, but like if Toyota just puts out a decent electric crossover, one that's not uncompetitive like the original BZ4X was, I think they'll do really well. So, you know, I think this has a lot of potential.
Yeah, it's there's always that gulf between like a car's specs on paper and like how it actually is, and so you know, like that's the fair answer, right? So we're gonna see how this thing holds up, but that's not all they had for us. There's more stuff coming from Toyota I want to talk about, but more importantly, before we get into that, it's worth noting again that
Toyotathon is on.
Oh man, that's just too much fun. Sorry. The second big announcement they had that is relevant to us Americans is, you know, Toyota announced that they're going to be dumping the names that they have for these EVs, like BZ4X. There's a BZ3, BZ3X. It's just it's nobody likes this. It's really complicated, and that's why their next EV is called the CHR Plus. Which is hilarious because like the CHR was a small compact SUV that they sold for a couple years in America. They kept it going in Europe as a hybrid. Now it's the Plus, and it's completely unrelated to the other CHR. It is a full EV, but it should be a little bit cheaper, and it looks like it has even better specs. It could be like a 300-mile EV in America, and it's not that much smaller than a BZ4X. But like if that car starts at like, I don't know, mid-30s in America, like that's really interesting. It's like I would buy something like this, and it's also, you know, north of 300 horsepower. It looks pretty quick. So that's really interesting that they're going to bring, you know, out a second dedicated EV that's probably coming to America too.
Yeah, I would, you know, I mean, this is the kind of price point and type of EV that we've been missing in the US. So I will also be excited to see that. I think the naming thing is interesting because and like slight tangent, but I feel like a lot of brands have been having this realization that the EVs just need to have regular names that people understand. I mean, BZ4X is like a particularly is a real mouthful in the way that some other EV names aren't. But like you see Mercedes-Benz, they were having the EQ cars, EQB, EQS, whatever. Now they're just going with like the, you know, standard name with EQ technology. Audi is rethinking it too. I'm trying to think who else. There was somebody else. Well, but yeah, everybody's kind of realizing that,
Audi's in particular was kind of hilarious because it was what they were doing was all of the even numbered cars like A4, A6, Q8 were EVs, and all of the odd numbered ones were gas powered like A5, A7. I literally do this for a living, and I could never keep track of which was which. So they were smart to abandon that. But it is interesting to hear this approach from Toyota. Like all their executives and engineers I talked to were just like, look, these are just becoming normal cars now. We're going to give you whatever you want. You want a Corolla. They didn't say Corolla explicitly, but like hypothetically, you want a Corolla, you get a gas version, hybrid, or the EV. No one told me this, but if I had to put money on it, like the next BZ4X, it'd probably just be called the RAV4 electric or something like that. So there's already a RAV4 hybrid. It's like that's what they're going to do. They're going to lean on these names people know. And it makes a hell of a lot more sense than just kind of, you know, breaking things out like you mentioned. And that's what's also cool about Toyota too is like there's a lot more coming out. They had this shadowy teaser at the end of it, and it was 3 more EVs. They're almost certainly destined for America. One of them, I'm guessing, is probably like the 3-row SUV that they're supposed to be making in the United States by Americans for Americans, but like a Kia EV9 competitor. There was a silhouette that was like very obviously a Land Cruiser. The Land Cruiser SE was a concept they showed off at Tokyo 2 years ago. And they had that same concept on display in Belgium. So it's like, I don't know if they would just be some coincidence, like why they trotted that out.
Right.
But the third one's the most interesting because that was a pickup truck. So this is confirmation from Toyota. They're making an electric truck. And I mean, I know you have thoughts on this, but that's game changer, that one, right?
Yeah, totally. You know, the Tacoma, the Toyota Tacoma is the best selling midsize pickup truck in America. And I think if they came out with something that was a decent electric version of that, they would absolutely crush it here. You know, EV pickups haven't really taken off, I think, in the way that automakers expected. But Toyota could really fill a gap here, and there's absolutely no reason that the Tesla Cybertruck should be the best-selling electric pickup truck in America, which it was last year. And so you can imagine that Toyota comes out with a compelling, like good range, electric Tacoma-like pickup with all the kind of, reliability and all the things that people know Toyota for. That thing's going to do really well.
Yeah, and it's worth noting we don't have a clue what that truck is going to look like or what form it's going to take. Right. A few years ago, Toyota showed off this concept that was just very obviously like a Tacoma that runs on batteries. Like, I mean, same body and everything.
Yeah.
And then 2 years ago, it had this other concept car. It was kind of like a Honda Ridgeline or a Rivian R1T almost. Like this sort of unibody, no division between the bed and the cab of the truck, and it had like a midgate behind it that could fold down for more room. That was called the EPU concept. And that was also designed in America by an American team, and that design was really popular. Like it really kind of resonated with our audience, certainly. So like I don't know which way they're going to go. If they're just going to go like straight Tacoma, or if they'll do something a little bit more, unusual here. But I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, I think they obviously should do something like that concept, and I think they know that. The midgate thing, just to explain, is like that is so cool. You've seen this on a couple of gas trucks in the past, but not really. And this is something that's now in the Chevy Silverado EV, I think, the GMC Sierra EV, and it's basically like the wall between the cab where the seats are and the bed can like fold down, so you can stick really long stuff like a surfboard or whatever in the bed, and it'll poke into the cab. And it's just like a no-brainer, kind of really interesting extra feature for a truck that I imagine is also a little bit easier when you're dealing with an EV. You have a little more flexibility in the packaging, so that would be really cool. And that's something that is sort of missing from the EV truck space right now, like an F-150 Lightning. It's just kind of like it's for better or worse, it's an F-150 with batteries in it, right? Toyota has an opportunity to come up with something really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Chevy Avalanche pulled that off 20 years ago, but like as you say, when you don't have to account for an engine or a transmission, there's a lot you can do design-wise. So hope they do something cool here. Also doing something cool is Lexus, and let me tell you, Fran, I didn't have this one on my bingo card this year, but the RZ, the Lexus RZ, which is this basically like fancier version of the BZ4X, has this really spectacularly nice interior, but all the same shortcomings with range and charging. It's been hitting the gym real hard lately, because now it has 408 horsepower. 408 horsepower. Let me say that again. It's getting simulated gear shifting, like on the Ioniq 5N. It gets steer-by-wire with like a yoke steering wheel, which Toyota's been experimenting with for years now. I've driven a couple of prototypes with the yoke, and every time I have, they've gotten better and better. So I'm guessing this production version is going to be really cool. So that's the RZ550E, it's called. And I don't know. I don't know if Lexus buyers will be into it, but they had a lot of performance and technology to this car that they say that stuff is where they're going to go next with their EVs. So really excited to drive that thing all of a sudden.
I think the big question here is like, is Toyota finally getting serious about EVs, and is that going to pay off?
I mean, my sense finally, after years of promises, is yes. Because like, I don't think they'd be teasing like a pickup truck if they weren't really serious about this stuff. Toyota has, from like its top brass down, they've been really skeptical of the market going fully electric, the way a lot of people have predicted. Chairman Akio, he has said in the past, like EVs will only be 30% of the market max. But that's what they projected, and then there's reality, right? They've done really well on hybrids, but like for a long time, it's felt like the missing component in that strategy was their EVs, and they're realizing that people are buying them, like they're being really popular. And I know you've some data you want to go into this too, but it's like the BZ4X sales were up significantly last year. They were up 100% in America alone. It's the top selling car, not just EV, but top selling car in Norway, because Norway's all electric now. It's one of the top sellers in all of Europe. So Toyota's finally like, oh, this is the thing our customers really want. And if we're going to do this multi-pathway approach the future. Like, we've got to give them what they're asking for. And I feel like they're about to finally do that.
Yeah. And I mean, like in the US, Toyota sold like, I think it was like 18,000-ish, 18,000, 19,000 BZ4Xs last year, which is not huge, but is significant. And I think it's significant for a crossover that's actually, like we said, not terribly good, like not terribly competitive. I think it just shows that, like, with all of these plans and with all these future plans, when Toyota really starts to put its head in the game, it has the opportunity to steal a lot of sales, steal a lot of EV sales from competitors, and just do really well here because people trust Toyota. Like, this is the thing. I think it's hard to overestimate how significant it is that the world's biggest automaker and probably the world's most trusted automaker has been essentially sitting on the sidelines of the EV transition. And it's been letting, in the US, companies like Tesla and GM and Hyundai and Ford kind of run away with things. It doesn't have to do that. And so I think once it starts to put out really compelling options, like a RAV4 electric, like a Tacoma electric, like a Highlander, whatever, it's going to get a lot of people on board. Like, for years, we've been seeing these studies, I think even before the BZ4X came out, before Toyota even had an electric vehicle in the US, there have been these studies that are like, okay, asking Americans, what brand are you most likely to buy an EV from? And Toyota was like winning these surveys over somebody like Tesla.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show, like, if they start to come out, if they start to really get serious, they're going to do really well here.
Yeah, I think we've covered this on the pod before, but like every time I've had like a Toyota EV I've been testing for work, or like Mac Hogan has, and I'm fast charging it somewhere, people run up to us and ask questions. They're like, "Oh my God, Toyota's making these things? Like, it's not just some like crazy startup. It's not just some like Chinese Communist Party psyop. Like, it's a real thing." I'm like, "Yeah, it's real." That's a different game because, like you said, that name is so trusted. And speaking of China, I think that's part of what got them off their ass a little bit here. It's like they looked at this stuff for years, and they looked at the success of Tesla. And it's like, okay, we'll see where this goes. Tesla's probably overvalued, which we know to be true. But then when this whole country with a massive amount of industrial might comes along, and it's like, oh crap, there's 20 Teslas here. And they've like reset how cars are made with things like gigacasting and fewer parts and better software, doing everything in-house. That's where they were like, we cannot afford to lose to these people. Like, no, you gotta bring your A game for that one. And I think that we haven't really seen that yet, as in America. The Europeans are starting to see it, certainly, but I think Toyota's going to find some ways to head that off, hopefully, before it comes here. But I'm excited for all these cars. I really am. I'm excited to try them,
Yeah, for sure. And I think to your point about Toyota realizing that EVs are just becoming cars, like even in the US, which lags behind a market like China in EVs, like the most popular electric models are starting to hit volumes that are actual like regular car volumes. Like you have for years the Tesla Model Y and Model 3 have been selling like hundreds of thousands of units, and those are kind of an exception. But you have cars like last year, the Mustang Mach-E, Ford Mustang Mach-E selling like over 50,000.
Outsells the gas Mustang, outsells the regular Mustang.
Yeah. The Ioniq 5 doing like over 40,000. It's starting to get to levels where like this is it's still a small part of the market. So I don't know how much Toyota will be punished for waiting this long, but it is growing. Like it's becoming a significant part of the market. And these models, like, it's becoming more compelling by the day for Toyota to be like, okay, yeah, maybe if we sold an electric RAV4, we'd sell like 50, 60,000 of those. Like, that makes sense. That makes sense more so than putting something out there that might get like 10,000,
Yeah. And one thing that's also worth noting, they have this big new factory they're opening in North Carolina. It's a battery plant, and it's going to make batteries for hybrids and EVs. And, they can be flexible on how much of each type that they make, depending on demand, but making more batteries, making them locally, that's what drives EV prices down. That's why EVs are so expensive. It's because China owns the battery supply chain. Once those get cheaper, like, you can do stuff in theory, like a Corolla EV, or like the CHR Plus, which I think might be like mid 30K here. So as prices go down, like they'll be in a good position to sell stuff that people want that won't be 50, 60 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One other thing that's worth noting though, Tim, do you know what's on right now?
I could guess.
Toyotathon is on.
It's never gonna get old, is it, Tim?
Already did.
It already did. Okay, cool. Great. I think to talk about, to move into our next segment here, a lot of these companies are trying to snatch up disgruntled Tesla owners, like people who have owned Teslas for a long time and because of recent events aren't super inclined to go back to gas cars. And that's a big market there for the taking. And we got some interesting developments on that front this week. You wanna lead us off with the White House EV Summit?
Yeah, interesting is one way to put it. Yeah, Tesla's plummeting stock price has a lot of people rattled, including its CEO, Elon Musk. It's shed about half of its market cap in 3 months, at a time when Musk's relationship with President Trump is supposed to be turbocharging its value.
Yeah, and lately Tesla can't go a single weekend without people protesting at its stores, and sales are slumping pretty much globally. I don't think we're going to know the full extent of that backlash until like April, when Tesla reports its Q1 numbers. And it's also, we have to note, it's possible that a lot of these people are waiting for the updated Tesla Model Y to come out. Like, we cannot rule that out too. But I think if we're getting into Q2, Q3 of this year, and nobody's buying the Model Y, like that's going to really show the level of backlash against Elon Musk and his involvement in politics, gutting the federal government, getting really involved in far-right politics and backing far-right candidates in Europe, and a lot of the sort of, like we've covered on the podcast before, the sort of liberal center-left base of people that are kind of your traditional EV buyers are getting really turned off to that. So so they had a big event in the White House this week, didn't they, Tim?
Yeah, and it's clearly, all this backlash is clearly having an impact because to stem the bleeding, you could say, Trump and Musk took to the White House lawn on Tuesday to hawk some Teslas. Let's take a listen to this really strange event.
So I just wanted to make a statement. I'm going to buy one. Now, here's the bad news. I'm not allowed to drive because if I haven't driven a car in a long time, and I love to drive cars, but I'm going to have it at the White House, and I'm going to let my staff use it. I'm going to let people at the place use it. And they all are all excited about that. I'm not allowed to use it. Can you believe it? One of my great things in life is that I can, I like to drive cars, but I'm not allowed to.
So yeah, that happened. Elon Musk finally got his White House summit, and I bring that up because back in 2021, 500 human years ago now, then President Joe Biden had a big summit on the White House lawn where he invited General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, and he did not invite Elon Musk and Tesla, ostensibly because like those other automakers are unionized with the UAW. Tesla is not. To be fair here, I actually think that was a huge unforced error on the Biden administration's part, because like you had Biden up there saying to like Mary Barr, like, you electrified the industry, Mary, like great job. It's like,
that was embarrassing.
Come on, man. Like, you can think Elon's kind of an asshole like I do and realize that's a little bit out of step with the truth. So Tesla wasn't invited to that. And some people say that was the start of Elon Musk's like Joker origin story, that he was so mad at Biden that's what sent him kind of down the path he's on now. I think he probably would have done that anyway, because he's just so online, but I don't think it was a smart thing for Biden to do. But now he got his summit, and it was all Tesla all the time,
Yeah, clearly this was an attempt to, get the president on board as a, Tesla brand ambassador and sell some more cars, because Musk is seeing that these sales are dropping, that probably more importantly, that the stock price is dropping, which is, a major source of his wealth. Do you think that this will have the impact that Musk hopes it will? Do you think this actually could juice Tesla sales at all, or is this a real own goal? Because that's kind of my impression of it.
I don't know, and I've been wondering that a lot last few days. I'm like, is this going to change the perception of EVs among, as we covered last time with our pal Mike Murphy, a group of people who are traditionally more resistant to EVs than Democrats or left-leaning voters. Is it going to change their perceptions? I don't know. On one hand, like, this is the most high-profile thing like a Republican elected official has ever done for electric vehicles, period.
Yes.
But it was also like explicitly for Elon and explicitly for Tesla. And when it was over, it was reported that Elon gave $100 million to Trump's super PAC. So this was definitely a quid pro quo thing. And it felt more like support my guy rather than like, this is the future of the American auto industry. But like, will some GOP voters like look at this like, yeah, I should consider a Tesla? Like, I think probably so. I'd like to see that happen because I don't think this should be partisan. But I really don't know. I mean, what's your read on it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you definitely could see some people who are like, oh, Trump likes this. Sean Hannity likes this. He also went out and says he bought a Tesla. Maybe I'll do the same. I also think it definitely doesn't help the people on the side of the, on the other side of the spectrum, people who are protesting Tesla or considering, not buying a Tesla because of the political affiliation. Like, this kind of, I feel like this feels like a nail in the coffin for those people who are like, okay, yeah, never mind. I don't agree with Trump or Musk, so yeah, no Tesla for me.
Yeah, it's not going to convince those folks that have been trying to dump their Teslas and have been protesting every weekend. Nor is the fact to keep it right, and nor is the fact that Trump said, if you do violent protests against a Tesla store, you'll be prosecuted as domestic terrorism. Okay, sure. Like, all right, man. So I don't know what the response to this is gonna be.
Yeah, but it did make me think, like you said, highest profile Republican endorsement of EVs. And during this event, like, Trump and Musk, they climb into the car and Trump is like looking at things. And Musk is really trying to get him to drive it. And he's telling him like, oh, it's just like a golf cart. It's just like a really fast golf cart. Trump's like, I haven't driven in years. But it did make me think, like, Donald Trump is a very impulsive person. People tell him, like, he really latches on, it seems like, to the last thing that somebody told him or the last thing he experienced. And we know from all these studies that people who get it, people who drive an EV or people who sit in one for the first time, like, they kind of get hooked. You drive an EV or you ride as a passenger in one, and that is a really powerful thing for showing people what an EV is like. It's quiet, fast, and cool. I think there's a chance that if you get Donald Trump to drive a Tesla Model S Plaid, like, that could be a switch might click in his head that's like, oh, this is the future. Like, yeah, we should support this.
Yeah.
If I was another automaker, if I was Ford or GM right now, I would be thinking about, how do I get Donald Trump into an F-150 Lightning or into a Hummer EV and take him around, show him how freaking quick those things are and quiet, and they have the, this big, like, impressive tablet display in the middle, and be like, okay, you're talking about cutting subsidies for EVs. Do you really think this is not the future of cars? Do you really want to stifle American companies that are building these things here, or at least in North America? I think it could be a really powerful thing. I think it could be like, yeah, actually, this is definitely the future, and I don't want China to be building these things. I want us to be building these things.
Yeah, that's the way in. It's like, you want to beat China or not? This is how we do it. But what's wacky though is immediately, like, one day after they do the White House Tesla Auto Show, Lee Zeldin, the new EPA administrator, comes out. He's like, yeah, we're getting rid of this, the EV mandate. Okay, so on one hand, you had the president up there hyping up America's biggest and greatest electric car company. Then you have his EPA administrator just, like, crapping on EVs and rules that were promoting EVs. Like, that feels deeply incongruent to me somehow. But also, it's like to what end, right? Is this like whatever is the end goal for any of this? Yeah.
And to clarify, no EV mandate. There really isn't one.
Yeah.
This is something that has become kind of mainstream terminology, even though it's not actually a thing that really exists. The EPA has these greenhouse gas emissions standards that were created under Biden that push more car sales to be electric over time. You can these automakers, they can fulfill these standards using any combination of technologies they want, between EVs and hybrids and plug-in hybrids and more efficient gas cars. You will need to sell a lot more EVs in order to satisfy those, but it's not like you have to sell X number by a certain date.
Yeah. And this crowd, they kind of blame EVs and electrification for how expensive cars have gotten. I mean, that's like objectively bunk. Like there's a reason a Jeep Wrangler now costs like 60 grand, and it's just like straight corporate greed, honestly. I don't see cars getting cheaper or like car companies saying, you know what, you're right, let's be less profitable because we don't have to worry about these pesky environmental rules. To go back to Tesla, one thing too that's stood out in my mind if this was just how rattled Elon Musk seems to be, especially like you said, over the stock price, because like for months now he's been doing all the Doge stuff. Tesla hasn't come up much. He kind of like ran in and did his annual conference with the investors, but it was just like Tesla's been this total afterthought, and now the stock price is tanking so much. He's like rallying the influencers and rallying the troops and rallying conservative media now, like Sean Hannity, you said, to really boost himself. And like, I don't know if I can be mean for a second. Like, I think he looked kind of weak up there. Like this whole thing to me with Elon, it had this vibe like everyone's being mean to me, and I need my daddy to come fight my battles for me, and also I'm going to pay him $100 million after. And like, he's kind of a bully. And I know a thing or two about bullies, and like most of them, when you get in their face a little bit, they fold like a card table. And I think he's starting to fold because like the source of his power, the source of his wealth is being threatened right now. So it was just I don't think I've ever seen him this on the ropes. For the people who are protesting every weekend, they're trying to get him moved from the company, trying to tank the stock price enough to get him to move on from the CEO. Clearly something is moving the needle here with all this stuff. So,
but I think, the goal of these protests is not necessarily directed at Tesla or at Elon Musk's role in Tesla. It's directed at how do we turn the screws to Elon Musk to stop, to Doge specifically, to stop, which pains me to say, to be honest, that is an actual part of the government. To turn the screws to Musk to stop firing people indiscriminately, taking apart big parts of the government. But yeah, it's clearly working. And it's just like you're saying, it's the same thing that happened at Twitter back in the day, which is like companies that ran ads on Twitter started pulling their ads because they were like, we don't like the direction this site is taking. We don't like the the outspokenness of its owner on the platform. And he was like crying foul, saying this is like very unfair. They're illegally colluding to stop running ads on Twitter. And it's like the exact same playbook here. It's like him and Trump both saying, this is unfair. And it's like, well, actions have consequences. It's a free market. People can buy what they want. People can sell ads where they want. And if they don't agree with what's going on, they can just sell their ads somewhere else or buy a different car. So too bad. Like, that's kind of my stance on it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Elon too. It's like, he acts like he says he's a free speech absolutist, but I don't think that's what he wants. He wants to be able to say and do whatever the hell he wants, and he wants everybody else to think it's completely awesome in return and embrace it wholeheartedly. And when they don't do that, like, he throws a temper tantrum. And like unfortunately that ain't how it works.
I have to maybe to close it out, go back to a fun part of this event, because it was supremely weird to see, first of all, a bunch of Teslas just like parked in front of the White House and have Trump talking about hawking full self-driving and talking about how much these cars cost. It was like so bizarre. But the funniest part of it was they get into the Model S and Trump is like, he's like, wow, it's so beautiful. He's talking about it and he goes, wow, everything's computer.
Everything's computer.
And like, I think that's, if you get the Toyotathon button, I want an everything's computer button.
Everything,
because that was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, everything is computer. The man has an incredible way with words. He does, honestly. I will just say this in closing, just to point out how weird our current moment is and why I feel like I'm in like the upside down world. Trump blamed quote, radical Democrats for trying to boycott Tesla and attack and do harm to Elon and everything he stands for. And it's like, that would have been a sentence that would have been unfathomable 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, you remember those moments, Tim, where you're just like, how did we get here? How did this happen exactly? Like, what is?
Yeah, I would argue there's it's somebody else who is trying to destroy everything that Tesla stands for, you know, and it's the Republican Party and Donald Trump.
Well, it's I not even maybe, but I think it's more, honestly, it's Elon at this point. Like, no, like, this is all such an unforced error on his part. No one made him sign up to personally gut the federal government. No one made him take time away from being the CEO of the world's biggest EV manufacturer. No one's making him do any of this stuff. It's just like, I don't know. It's like you said, it's like actions be consequences, right? But none of this needed to happen. Kind of the saddest part of all of it, in my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. On a more upbeat note, a considerably more upbeat note, we are debuting a new segment here on the Plugged In podcast that we're calling Mailbag or EV Mail. Tim, did we decide on a name for this yet? Which one do you like better? Or is there a better choice?
I thought email.
Email. Yeah, email. Like
kind of works. Kind of works.
Yeah. Either way, what we started doing is answering questions from our listeners about EV buying, the state of the market, how to own or drive or buy into these cars, or anything else you want to know about.
Yeah, within reason.
Yeah, within reason. Like, there are definitely aspects of your life where you should not be taking advice from me and Tim Levin. But we'll kick this off with Josh from Ohio. Josh from Ohio writes, I'm a regional sales manager and drive approximately 30 to 40,000 miles per year. That's a lot. I currently drive a 2022 Toyota Sienna hybrid minivan, which is a great vehicle, but I'd like to at some point pivot to an EV because I know they're the future, and because they drive amazing, which is big to me since I spend so much time in a vehicle. My concern is, range aside, the longevity of an EV. I also need plenty of room for my samples, products, etc., in addition to hauling kids around when I'm home, so my options are limited. I'm considering an F-150 Lightning extended range, but I'm not so sure if it's built to last 200,000 miles, or if I'm better off running my hybrid Sienna into the ground. I would have the ability to charge at home, and would have the flexibility to charge while on the road. I do live in the Cleveland area, which does get cold, and I travel from Detroit to Philly a lot. Appreciate any insights you may have, and keep up the great work with the podcast. That was so nice, Josh. Thank you so much. Tim, what do we think of Josh's conundrum here?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Josh. It's tough. I think that a lot of these needs are kind of a sore spot for EVs in a way. Like, if you're talking about you need a big car, like, you know, Sienna sized, you need a big car, you drive a lot, 30 to 40,000 miles a year. That's way more than the average. And you're driving in the cold. This is tough. I think to start, like, on the longevity point, I think it's a great question. I think it's something, I get that question a lot. It's hard to know. It's always been hard to know with EVs because you don't really know how long they last until they last that long. So we're only just now starting to get at the point where, like, modern EVs are hitting 150, 200, whatever, thousand miles. And now we're getting a better sense of how these things last. And I think, you know, most of the research I've seen says probably don't worry about it. EV batteries, the degradation is actually not terribly significant over a long period of time. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But I do think, you know, I think if you're committed to this, I think the big kind of Sienna-sized EVs that come to my mind are Kia EV9, excellent vehicle. The Hyundai Ioniq 9, which is kind of a sibling to that, it's coming out soon, and the Rivian R1S. I think you'd be really happy with any of those. I think you're going to want to prioritize long range and efficiency if you're doing a lot of travel like this. But I think I'd also kind of, I don't know, I'd proceed with caution. I think a 2022 Sienna Hybrid is a great car. I'm a big fan of just like driving things into the ground, so why not? And then I'll say one thing and then I'll pass it to you, Patrick. I think it just depends on the type of travel you do. Like
Yeah.
the idea of driving a ton for work and driving a big car scares me a little, even as a guy who is really into EVs. I think it depends on what sort of travel you do, right? If you are going 250 miles in a day and you're going out and back home and you can just charge at home, that might actually work with an EV that has enough range. If you're doing really long road trips where you're going to exceed the range of that EV and have to be finding charging stations a lot while you're like at work, you might find that that's a little less convenient than you bargained for. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, not to be, it's kind of boring, but I completely concur with you here, right? Like the EV9 is probably our friend Josh's strongest choice. I'm sad to say I forgot about the Ioniq 9. It's sibling that'll be out later this year. Both of them are kind of expensive. Like we've seen some good lease deals on them. Rivian R1S is a great choice too, but we know that to be pretty expensive also. And then you're getting these problems like cold weather, bigger vehicle, highway driving. These are all things that like right now EVs aren't great at. So like I'm going to be a bad EV guy here and just recommend that Josh keep the Sienna because that's a hybrid. It already uses less gas and creates less emissions than a purely gas car. If it's a 2022, I mean, he's paying it off, or he's either paid it off. And I mean, these damn things are indestructible, those minivans. Like I think you could keep that going for a long time. And by the time you do, there will be more and better and cheaper choices on the market, and it'll suit all those needs. Like I would not, if I guess from what we talked about today, right? I would not rule out some kind of Sienna EV coming out in the next few years. So thanks for writing in, Josh. And if you want to submit a question of your own, email either of us or podcasts@InsideEVs.com, which is a brand new email address I had our tech support team set up this morning. Very exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to hearing all your questions.
All right, now in closing, it's time for Plus Minus, our segment where we talk about who's up and who's down. Tim, who you got for me today, man?
I think given the sort of negative, we kept it pretty positive today. But anyway, I'm gonna end us with a plus, which is do you know how this company is pronounced?
I've heard Tilo. I've heard that.
Tilo. I think Tilo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tilo Trucks, which is an EV startup, announced its first drivable pre-production prototype recently, and I think these things are super cool. They revealed it a couple of years back, and now, I mean, frankly, I kind of forgot about. I got really excited about it at that time, kind of forgot about it, and it turns out they're still working on it, and they're actually making good progress. This thing is super cool. It is a cab forward mini electric pickup truck that has the footprint of a Mini Cooper, 5 seats, claiming 350 miles of range, 5-foot bed, 250 kilowatt charging, and a decent starting price in like the 40,000s range. Big claims. I mean, color me skeptical I think it's hard not to be skeptical when you've been tracking the EV industry for a while, and we've seen a lot of these startups come and go, like raise money and then crash and burn. I have no reason to think that will be the case here, but building EVs is really expensive, really hard, takes a lot of investment and a lot of time, and so we'll have to see if they can do this. I hope they do, because I would like to buy one of these things.
Yeah, we're kind of past the BS startup phase of EVs, right? Like this market's getting serious. China's serious, Toyota's serious. It's a very different capital environment for startups than it was 5-10 years ago. So I don't think you can do this wacky fly-by-night stuff like you used to. So I hope they're onto something, because those designs are really great.
And I think what bodes really well for Tilo is that it is not just another luxury or another premium crossover. This isn't a Fisker Ocean. This is actually something that doesn't exist. This is a white space kind of vehicle. I don't know how big the market is in America for very tiny trucks, but I think there are a lot of other weirdos out there like me who would buy this thing.
Yeah, if you're a startup founder and you're trying to make another luxury sedan or SUV in the EV space, me and Tim are going to jump you in an alley, because no one cares. The market's moving on. This stuff has to get cheaper. If you want to win, figure out a way to make this stuff affordable for everybody and not just for the 1%ers. My plus this week, man, honestly, I gotta give it to Tesla and Elon, believe it or not. Because in spite of everything, this guy, Elon Musk still got the president up there being his hype man in front of the White House. And maybe this will change some hearts and minds about how electric vehicles and the sector are viewed. Their stock price is starting to nudge up a little bit since this happened. I don't know if it's because of this event or other things happening. It's still quite a bit lower than it was a few months ago. But I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, this is, we've been saying for months, like, where is this relationship with Trump and Elon going to go? And like, I don't know. This feels like a net positive for him, at least among, a big chunk of the population. So, like you said, like, certainly less so among the people who are mad at Elon and maybe don't like Donald Trump. But I don't know. I'm going to call it that investment seems to be paying off for him, I guess. We'll see.
Yeah, it would be different if Tesla sales were plummeting, Tesla stock price dropping like a rock, losing several $100 billion in value, and you also lost the faith of the president, the whole kind of reason this was happening. Yeah. Currently, at least one of those things is still healthy. So I guess that's good for Elon.
Boy, if that shoe drops, that's a different story, though. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's been a long year, Tim. I know it's March. It's middle of March, but it's been a long year.
People are going to get tired of us saying that at some point, but I can't stop.
Yeah, never a dull moment. All right, well, thank you for listening to the Plugged In podcast from Inside EVs. We'll be back next Friday, as always. Today's show was produced by Michael Perkins and brought to you by the Motorsport Network.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a review, and tell a friend to tune in. It'll really help us out. And if you liked what you heard, you can find all our EV coverage on InsideEVs.com. See you next time.
Everything's computer.